Hi guys, today we're going to talk about multiplying fractions using models, and this video will count as quadrant 1. Now in order to be done with quadrant 1 though, we do need to have a conversation sometimes between quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 so I can make sure that you really understand how to use the models. So when we're thinking about fractions, let's first just think about regular fractions. 1/3. What 1/3 is telling us is that I will take one piece out of three pieces that make up a whole. So for example, if I had a pie that was cut into three pieces, I took one of them. But the whole pie, to have it whole pie completely together, I would need to have all three pieces. So when I'm looking at this problem, I want to take 3/4 of 1/3. I'm not taking 3/4 of a whole. So let's look at how we would create that model, and then what would we do with that rectangle we're going to use for our model. So 3/4. The denominators, 3 and 4, are going to dictate the dimensions of the rectangles we're going to use to create our models. So this one is going to be a 3/4. And let's look at what that means. What that means is I can take 1/3 if I go horizontally, because this model is made up of 3 rows. So 1/3 would be one full row. Now, how many pieces make up 1/3? Well, we can count. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 pieces for this particular model that will make up 1/3. Out of how many? 12. Now, let's look at that. Out of 12 pieces, I've taken 4. Okay, out of 12 pieces, I've taken 4. And when I simplify that, that's 1/3. So can we agree now that to take one full row, we have taken 1/3 of our model? I think we can, because there's 1, 2, 3 rows. I've taken one of them. Now, of that model, which is made up of 4 pieces, I only want 3/4 of what's taken from 1/3. So that would be, out of the 4 pieces I need to make 1/3, I am going to take 3. So basically what I've done here is I've taken one row, and of that one row, I'm only taking 3 of those pieces. So let's shade in the 3 pieces we're going to take. Okay? So when I go to write my solution or my product here, I will look and say I've got 1, 2, 3 pieces that I've taken out of 12 pieces that are used to make up the whole model. Okay? Not the whole of 1/3. To make one whole, I would need 12 pieces. So my product is 3/12. And when I simplify that, I get 1/4, because we always simplify our models. Now let's look at that. How many times can I take 3? Oh, I've taken it 1. Here's a second group of 3, a third group of 3, a fourth group of 3. So I have taken 1 out of 4 groups of 3, so 1/4. All right, so let's move on and let's look at the next one. Similar, except for my first fraction isn't a unit fraction anymore. So now I'm looking at just a plain old regular fraction, 2/3 and 3/4. It does not change how I deal with this problem though. I still look at my denominators 3 and 4. And when I go to make my model, I'm going to use those denominators to help me create the rectangle I'm going to use. So in this case, I'm going to do a 3/4 model again, because those are my denominators. Once again, I'm thinking this time, how many pieces would make up 2/3? Okay, another way to think of this is the model is made up of 12 pieces. 2/3 is how many of those 12? Well, 3 times 4 is 12, 2 times 4 is 8. So I'm going to need 8 pieces. Look what happens when I take those 8 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have now taken 8 pieces. And if you'll notice, it's out of 1, 2, 3 rows, those 8 pieces are made up of 2 rows. So 2 out of my 3 rows. So here's my 2 rows that I'm taking. And now I want to take 3/4 of that. So 1/4 would be to, or 4/4 would be to take all 4 columns here. But I want to take 3/4 of this. So let's do it one row at a time. So here we go. 1, 2, 3 out of 4 in the first row. 1, 2, 3 out of 4 on the second row. And so if we look here, the pieces I've taken, how many of the whole have I taken? Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have taken 6 pieces out of 12. Now again, I'm looking at this fraction and right away I'm thinking, uh-oh, I need to simplify. Well, what is a common factor of 6 and 12? You might say, oh, well, it's 6. So 6 goes into 6 once, 6 goes into 12 twice. So 3/4 of 2/3 is 1/2. Okay. Let's try another. Here, our denominators are a little bigger, but that does not change the way we treat this problem, okay? So, again, I'm going to look and say my denominators are 7 and 5, so that means my model needs to be 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 by 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So I'm looking at this and I need to take 6 sevenths or 6 out of 7 for each of my columns of 7. So here we go. I'm going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows out of 7. And that will represent my 6 sevenths. Now of that, I need to take only 2 out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. So if I'm looking at that, I'm going to take 2 from each row. And if you might notice, all I'm really doing is taking this array and shading in the rectangle of where these 2 would line up, okay? So when I go to find my product, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I've got 12 pieces that I'm taking. Out of the whole model, it's a 7 by 5, so 7 times 5 is 35. So I'm taking 12 35ths. And that does not need to be simplified. That's as small as it can, that's as simple as that fraction can be written. All right, let's look at number 4. Once again, the denominators are going to help me determine how I make my rectangles. I can make them bigger or smaller. I can double the 5 and say 10 by 4, but it's just easiest to take the simplest version of the model of the fraction that you're going to be dealing with. In the same way we like to simplify our fractions. So here we go. I am going to make a 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 2 rectangle. And in that rectangle, I'm going to start with my 3/5. That's what I have. I have 3/5 of this model. So 3 out of my 5 rows. Now, I'm not taking all of those pieces. I only am taking 1 out of the 2 columns, 1 for every 2 pieces that I have. So I'll take that one, leave that one. Take 1, leave the second. Take 1, leave the second. So when I shade in my model here, I have shaded in 3 pieces out of, well, a 2 by 5 out of 10 pieces that make the whole. So my product here is 3/10. And again, that does not need to be simplified. Okay. Let's look at one more problem. And you will notice this problem is different, again, than the ones we've looked at because we're dealing with a mixed number. But that does not change the way we create our model. That just adds to what we need in order to create our model. So again, as always, I've got a 4 by 3. The denominators determine the size of my rectangle, and in this case, it's going to be 4 by 3. So I'm going to go 4 by 3, and you'll notice it takes 12 pieces to make up the whole. So this time it's a little different because I want a whole model first. So this model here, I want all of it. This is going to be my 1, which is the same thing as saying 4/4, because I've taken 4 out of the 4 possible rows I can take. And I still need 3/4 though. So what I need to do is create a second model. And this time, instead of taking all of it, I'm only going to take 3 out of 4 rows. Okay. Now, when I go to take my 2/3, I need to take 2/3 of everything I have. So all of these yellow squares, or that, they have the yellow line through them, I need to take 2/3 of them. Well, that's nice because each row has 3. So out of these 3, I'm taking 2. 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 And again. And I'm going to do that for every single row. Now let's shade and look at what we got. So when I shade in this model here, I'm going to notice that I have how many pieces shaded in. Well, let's count them. Because here, again, this would be my 3 out of 4 here. And this up here is my 2 out of 3. So altogether, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 pieces. Out of how many did we say made up one whole? Well, when I took one whole to begin with, I noticed earlier that that was 12 pieces that I took. So you notice here, oh, look, that is actually an improper fraction, which we then will turn into a mixed number. So I know you all know how to do that, but let's take a little different look at this. I'm going to have 4 pieces that have not been filled in. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to start taking a piece out of my model and filling it in. So I'll take that one, I'll take this one, move it up here. I'll take this piece, move it up here. I'll take this piece, move it up here. So now I've got one whole. So in my solution, or my product, I have one whole. Now that makes sense because 12 goes into 14 one time. With how many left over, though, that I couldn't put into the first model to make it one whole? Well, there were 2 left over. Well, 12 goes into 14 one time with a remainder of 2. Out of how many pieces make the whole? Well, that doesn't change. It still needs 12 pieces to fill up a whole rectangle. And now you'll notice, look, 2/12 needs to be simplified. So what I really have here is 1, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. 12 divided by 2 is 6, so 1 and 1/6. Okay? All right. So you are now done with this video. Come on, have a conversation with me. I'd love to hear what you kind of came up with, any observations you've made throughout this process, any aha moments, and then we're going to work on quadrant 2 and see how you're doing so we can move you on. All right, can't wait to talk to you.